Alright guys, today we've got something a little bit different. We are going to check out every 500cc bike in every MX versus ATV game. Now, when I was doing this, I was a bit surprised how many games had the 500. In my mind, I thought that this bike had shown up in more games. So, yeah, we're going to go over them today. And the first game we're going to start off with would be MX versus ATV Unleashed. Now, this would be the beginning game to the series. Yes, I know we had ATV Off-Road Fury and MX Unleashed, but where they put them both in the same game and began the long-standing series that we have today would be this game, MX versus ATV Unleashed. And this would be the first time we saw the 500. Now, the 500... and I do show you, there were 3 different versions of the 500. We had two 2-stroke 500 bikes and a 4-stroke 500 bike. Now, the weird thing about the 500 in this game is that the 2-strokes had the 4-stroke sound. I don't know why. I forgot that was a thing, but it is. So, this bike would be one of the 2-stroke versions, but it's a 4-stroke. I don't know why. And the other bike, I didn't try it, but I'm pretty sure it's the same. And I was showing you, we have the 500cc class and then the bikes. We had the one we were using, this one, and then the 4-stroke. But, again, all of them have the 4-stroke sound to them. So, that's kind of weird, and I would say that's the biggest downside to the bike. Also, you can't customize these bikes as much as you could the 250 and the 450 and all that stuff. So, the other thing that I wanted to mention and kind of talk about with this specific 500 is that in this game, they didn't really try to balance it, you know. The bike controlled and handled the same as the rest of bikes. You could whip it in the air and corner the bike the same. It just had a bit more power, right? So, I mean, it was probably the best bike in the game, but I still prefer to use the 450s or the 250s because, again, I said it, but these 500 bikes can't be customized. You couldn't put the Honda factory graphics or the Pro Circuit Kawasaki graphics on it or whatever. I mean, you couldn't even customize it whatsoever. So, for that reason, I still preferred the 450, and I don't know how much better the 500 is compared to the 450 or the 252 stroke. I would be willing to guess that it was pretty similar, but, I mean, I don't play this game near as much as I used to, obviously, back in the day, so, you know, whatever. But, yeah, the 500, really cool, and the first time we ever saw it would have been in this game, MX versus ATV Unleashed. Switching over to the second game that the 500 made its appearance would have been all the way forward into MX versus ATV Supercross and Supercross Encore. Now, I show you we have the Nordic and Rainbow versions of the bike, and I chose to use the Rainbow bike because I preferred it, but yeah, so this bike is a bit different from Unleashed, obviously. It controlled differently. So they tried to balance the bikes out so that, you know, whatever bike you want to use in multiplayer was not way better. Yeah, the 500 has unbelievable power and a good clutch boost, but it didn't corner or handle, or you couldn't use it. It just didn't control near as good as the rest of bikes in the game. Minus maybe the 650 was pretty bad too, but the 500 controlled pretty bad. I did have a few friends back in the day that could make this bike go pretty fast in multiplayer, and I always felt like it was so annoying racing a 500, just because it feels like it's really easy to get out of control with that bike and whatnot. It's hard to whip it, and it's just so easy to mess up corners and whatnot just because they're trying to balance it. So yeah, the 500 is really fun to use in the game, but it doesn't control very good. Now, this 500cc 2-stroke also came with a 250cc 2-stroke. It was a 4 2-stroke bike pack. I had to say that weird because I didn't want to say 4-stroke. It was a 4 2-stroke bike pack. 2 250cc 2-strokes and 2 500cc cc two-strokes, and it was DLC, okay? It wasn't just in the game. I don't know how much it was. It was probably somewhere around $2 to $5, and it was fun, and I bought it and enjoyed it, but the bike is kind of gimmicky. I never felt like it was worth using that bike for much of anything besides maybe free riding, waypoint races, and straight rhythm. This bike I feel like can excel at straight rhythm because you can get full preloads, you can whip glitch, and just get it into 5th gear, and it has tons of power, and you can jump huge, crazy big sections on the straight rhythm, and you don't have to turn. The worst part about this bike is the cornering, probably. So you get it on straight rhythm, or like I said, waypoint, or free ride, and where you don't have to turn very much, and it isn't so bad. The motocross tracks can be fun, but supercross is just, in my opinion, it was a nightmare. It was such a nightmare to use this bike, but it could be fun, and I'm happy they put it in the game. I mean, it is fun to have it to just add content to the game, and like I said, it had been a big break since we had it. We didn't have it for Untamed, Reflex, or Live. So yeah, cool to see it return. It was DLC, but the second time, only the second time we saw the 500 would have been in Supercross, and this game, MX versus ATV Supercross Encore. And we have MX versus ATV All Out. This would be the third game that had the 500. Now, we have two different versions. We have the rainbow one I showed you. It looks pretty sick, actually. It looks like a kind of a restored CR500, and then the Nordic bike. Now, the 500 in this game was probably a little bit more fun to use because it controlled a little bit better, but the controls, the handling, the way it felt in the game, they still tried to balance it, right? It still didn't feel as good as the 450 or the 250 or whatever. It didn't feel as good. Coming back to this game, and I know it was kind of a problem in the beginning, but I didn't really, I've played it a little bit on and off over the years, and the bouncing has got better, but the bouncing on this bike, and I changed the setup for it, it was really bouncy, and the cornering could be a bit weird, but as far as the way it controlled in the air, because in Encore, the 500, you couldn't really whip that bike. It was really weird. I mean, you could, but it was still really stiff and heavy and weird to use in the game. But in All Out here, it isn't really that big a deal, and it does have more power. It does, for sure. But I still say that the 450 would be better. The 500 was fun to use in the game, but I mean, it feels more gimmicky than anything. And one of the worst parts about the 500 in this game, and yes, I know I'm talking over it, but this isn't a review of the game. It's just talking about the 500s in every MX versus ATV game. The bike sound for this particular bike was not good. The bike sounds in the game overall weren't very good. The 125 did get better, but the 4-strokes, the 252 stroke, and the 500 just weren't good. It kind of sounds like a weird vacuum, like a weird vacuum, and that just can take away a bunch from the bike. If the bike sound is really, really, really bad, it just doesn't make a player probably, well, I'll speak for myself, but makes me not want to use the bike, and that's part of the reason probably why I didn't really use the bike that much, on top of the fact that, again, it just didn't handle as good as the 450 because they're trying to find a balance. They didn't just throw the 500 in the game the way they did with MX vs ATV Unleashed, where it was just as good as the rest of the bikes, better because it had more power. So yeah, 500 has only been in 3 games. Now, we don't know about MX vs ATV Legends. I mean, they're constantly adding and updating that game and have plans to do all kinds of stuff. They haven't made any mention of it, and I don't really know if anybody's even asked for it. The only bike that I know for sure that people want to see and MX vs ATV has acknowledged would be the pit bike. More specifically, the 110. So the 500, maybe it makes its way into Legends in the future, and we could say we have it in 4 games, but the 50 has been in 1 more game than the 500, and if they do add it successfully to the new game MX vs ATV Legends, it will be in 5 versus 3 games with the 500. So The pit bike is obviously more sought after. More people want that in a game, but we did a video on that, so I wanted to do it on the 500. And if you were curious and thought that the 500 was in more games than just 3, you would be wrong, because I thought the same thing. I thought Untamed had it as well, but it didn't. So let me know in the comments what you guys think. Do you want to see the 500 in future games? Which version of the 500 was your favorite? And we can go from there, but I'd be really curious to know. So you guys and girls are absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for the support on the channel lately. It really does mean a lot. And until the next video, take it easy.